Welcome to the space for transformational leaders to unleash their magic, see better client results, work lighter, and live source. Does your book have its own timing? I'm Darla Ledoux. I am the founder of Source. I'm actually the author of 2 books, Retreat and Grow Rich and Shift the Field, which just launched back in April. And I know a lot of the people in my community have written books or have a book in them. And in fact, sometimes the book's been in you for a very long time. So I wanted to have this conversation about books and the divine timing of books. So does your book have its own timing? When I wrote my first book, Retreat and Grow Rich, it was awesome and easy in so many ways and challenging and difficult in many other ways. But what you may not know is that I sat down to write a book 3 times before I wrote Retreat and Grow Rich. I took a program, write your book in a weekend. I set myself up in a friend's beautiful home when they were out of town, and I had my laptop, my snacks, all the things. I was ready, right? And I think I mostly ate snacks and did not write a book. Another time I booked myself a little mountain lodge and, no calls and all of this. I ended up going hiking in the snow and I think I watched some Netflix, right? And again, no book. I might have written a little bit. Another time I set myself up to have morning pages each morning, and then I just decided I would figure out how those all went together. And I did write for a while, but they never quite came together. And so when it was time to get real about writing a book, first of all, I hired a coach, which was amazing. We created an outline so I knew what to write each day. I kicked and screamed a little bit about the outline because I am a free spirit and I want to just write what feels like it wants to come through each day, right? So that process was challenging. But once I had the outline, I knew to sit down and write. And this doesn't mean there weren't days I didn't write or things that were, days that it was harder to write than others, but I got it done. And it was pretty quick. It was about 3 months of writing from start to finish. And then the editing process was a few months and publishing and all of that. But pretty smooth, really. This recent book, which I just launched called Shift the Field, was a little bit of another story. So I had the same process. I hired a coach. I hired the same coach. It worked before. She's amazing. We created an outline. And truth be told, I had actually created the outline a while before, and then I set it aside and I thought, I had worked with her to create it. And I thought, this is not the book. Okay, so I had worked with her, a couple years ago, several years ago, to create this outline. I had it on my hard drive. I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is the book. I'm gonna, I told her, I'll just work on it. Now I have the outline, it's good, I'll work on it. Well, I didn't. And I actually thought, over and over, this is not the book. This is not the right book. This is not, I need to write, this is old now. Like I wrote this outline so long ago. This stuff I've been teaching for so long. This is not the book. And so I ended up hiring her again to figure out what the book was. And we went through the process and guess what? That was the book. But it needed this time and this space. And I kept coming back to it and it told me, this is the book that wants to be written. Now my ego said, it's too old. I had all kinds of conversations about why this wasn't the book. But my soul said, right, Source said, this is the book. So I gave the book a working title and I began to write it. With my coach's support, I started on my pages. But actually, here's what happened first. I decided I was going to, since I had the outline, since I wrote my last book in 3 months, I said, I can do this in 1 month. I'm going to write this book in 1 month. And so I set aside the month of February 2020 to write my book. And I got my team on board to handle everything while I was gone. I only had to show up live like twice. and everything else was off my calendar, and I was going to write this book in a month. Guess what? Nothing was getting written. I was about 2 months in to my month off to write my book, and I said to my team, you know what? This isn't happening. All I can think about is all the things I need to get done, and and I'm not writing actually, so I'm just going to come back to work. And I did. Well, in March 2020, right, the pandemic started, and I was moving. So I moved from California to Texas during March, during the pandemic, and which was part of why I wanted to get the book done before my move, and whatever I thought, right, my ego thought. And so I moved. And so we're in moving and figuring out what is a pandemic, what does this even mean, all of that stuff. And once it became apparent we're settled in, right, we can't go anywhere, then I knew it was time to birth this book. So I started working with my coach. I have regular calls, regular pages. I'm working through it. And I had a name for the book. It was called The Sourced Experience. And I actually launched a book study. And so I invited people on my list, because I wasn't really doing a lot else marketing-wise. I invited people on my list to study with me and read the pages as I wrote them. So I had this additional incentive and deadline to complete the book. So I'm writing my pages, I'm getting the book done, I get to the end of the book, woohoo, I'm so excited, and then it's time to edit. And editing the book, for those of you who haven't done it, it's a whole other process, because now you have to look at your own work. And for me, that's not always comfortable. Often I'd rather write a whole new book than actually read and review and edit what I've already written. So in the process of writing this book, and I love that I was able to bring in readers and kind of be in that energy as I went. In the process of writing this book, during that time, I was leading a group of clients in a program, and I developed this little assessment that I called the Sourced Magic. I might have called it Your Intuitive Gift at that time, actually, and I rebranded it Your Sourced Magic, but they got a lot of value out of this, right? So I'm writing this book, and I've got this new thing called the Magic, and people are liking it, and I'm talking about it with clients, and it's really helping them. And so here I'm writing this book, and I've got this new thing, and I think, I'm gonna put this chapter in this book. I don't even know why or what it means, and so put this chapter in, and I get to the end, and it's time to edit, and I'm realizing this book is different than the book I thought I was going to write. Even though it's the same, it's different. And so I had to sit with it a while. Again, a book has its own timing. Now I'm impatient, right? I meant to write this last February. It's now September, and the book is a different book than I thought. I don't really know what that means. How much do I need to change? All of that. And so I'm just sitting with it and sitting with it. And it doesn't come, and it doesn't come. And I'm waiting, and I'm still working with clients and, doing all the things. But in many ways, my business was waiting for this book. But it doesn't come, and it doesn't come, and it doesn't come. And it's like I don't even want to look at it. I don't want to talk to it. I don't want to talk about it. It's not happening, right? And then there was a point, just one day, and here's what I've learned. And again, take my Sourced Magic quiz to learn about your Sourced Magic. But what I've learned is everything in our business is energy. Every marketing tool, every strategy, everything we do with our clients, every program we offer, it's all energy. And energy transforms and transmutes, right? Sometimes with love and attention, and sometimes with letting it be, letting it percolate, letting it simmer. And in my Sourced Leader certification, that's one of the things I love to teach people is what does your magic need to be at its best with your clients? How does it work, right? And sometimes it's like it's the space in between energetically that matters more than the active work of writing. And so it kept telling me, let it be, let it be, let it be. Now, how I see this now as I see energy is this book was kind of like energetically aligning itself to be ready to be edited. And meanwhile, I, without trying or knowing, am energetically aligning myself to be ready to be a match for this book so that we could come together, make the edits, and deliver in just the right way. In the meantime, I hired a publisher, which was like the perfect publisher for me, who could come make the book even better. And it was all in like I was probably also waiting for her, right? Because it was all in divine, perfect timing and alignment. And we were able to make it happen. And everything about the launch of the book, the timing of it felt right. The reception was beautiful. And if we look at everything happening in the world, you know, whatever my ego would have said about what this book needed to be and when it needed to be, I didn't know a pandemic was coming. I didn't know, you know, what was the right timing that people needed to receive and hear this information. Why would I know, right? We think we know, and we get so upset, or we let our fear and scarcity about money get in the way and make us push things forward when they're not ready yet, or we let our habitual self-shaming of, you know, being a procrastinator, you should get this done by now, why can't you figure this out, right? All that critical self-talk get in the way of letting Source work through us on divine timing. On divine timing. What if all the things you touch, including your book, have a divine timing? And that you could never, ever, ever be wrong, and that you're not actually trying to procrastinate. There's nothing wrong with you. You're allowing it to flow through you. Now, even if you have resistance, right, and part of what we do at our company is help people to understand where they're in default energy or resistance and where they're in sourced energy. That's, you know, one of the main things we do here. But you, either way, right, the key is if you make yourself right, your default energy dissipates. If you make yourself right, if you can embrace and accept what is in the moment, right? You make space for sourced energy to come through you and for you to really recognize and understand the divine right timing. I hope this is helpful for those of you who are authors or going to be authors. If this has been helpful, I would love to hear. You know, if you are someone who's going to be an author, one of the things I'm thinking about is one of the reasons that sometimes the timing doesn't line up is perhaps your brand or your offerings isn't yet ready to carry the clients that that book is meant to bring in. And I had this happen recently with a client I'm working with. She was in this place of shaming herself for not having her book done yet, not having her book done yet, not having her book done yet. And yet, when we talked to the book about what it wanted to be, it actually needs a different kind of brand for the clients to enter into. And that's why it's not done yet, right? She was becoming the brand that could use this book to attract beautiful clients into this community. It's always, always, always sourced. It's always, always, always divine. Post any questions, share your experiences, and I will see you soon.